Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, and their organizations prepare for change and transformation. I'm your host, Tom Hood, the EVP of Business Engagement and Growth at the AICPA SEMA, the largest global body of certified professional accountants in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about the Visible Expert Revolution by the author of the bestseller, The Visible Expert Revolution: How to Turn Ordinary Experts into Thought Leaders, Rainmakers, and Industry Experts. Lee Frederiksen, PhD, with co-authors Elizabeth Harr and Karl Feldman, wrote this book. And joining me is Lee Frederiksen, the former managing partner, strategist, and growth expert at Hinge Marketing, a firm that develops practical, reliable programs to transform any professional services firm into a high-performing standout. Lee has a PhD in behavioral psychology, where he left a tenured professorship to lead the organizational consulting practice at one of the big eight, there were eight back then, accounting and consulting firms, and never looked back. He's written and co-authored numerous books based on research, including The Visible Expert: Online Marketing for Professional Services, Spiraling Up and Inside the Buyer's Brain. He also revised the latest edition of Marketing Professional Services. He's written extensively in professional journals. He's appeared in the New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Entrepreneur and Advertising Age, as a visible expert in the industry. Lee, say hello to our audience.
Hello, pleasure to have it. It's a pleasure to be here, Tom.
It's great to have you on the show, and wow, what a great bio there. So let's start with the book, The Visible Expert Revolution. I love that title, How to Turn Ordinary Experts into Thought Leaders, Rainmakers, and Industry Experts. So talk about why you chose revolution in your topic, in your title for the second volume on Visible Experts.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tom. We saw that two things were happening here simultaneously. On one hand, there is never been a time when we've needed experts more. The technology, the pace of change, organizational culture, you name it. There's a dramatic need for people who can explain change and can help us cope with it. So the demand is there. And what's really changed is, for the first time ever, it is easier to become a visible expert, because of what's happened with the whole way work has been shuffled around when post-pandemic. We've learned that you do not need to be sitting next to someone to work with them. We've learned that Zoom and those things work perfectly fine for talking with clients. And we've learned that remote work is, not only possible, but very practical. And so you put those two things together, and for the first time, you can be a world-class expert without living next to a major airport and having a frequent flyer to account to die for. It is a completely different world, and that really changes everything and opens it up in a way that hadn't been possible in the past.
So I certainly identify with that. Having the frequent flyer account and all that. You're right. That the old days, that's exactly what you had to do. You still have to do a decent amount, but I love what you said. Is that this whole revolution is the change in the environment, and the tools that are now available are making this a game changer, right? In that notion. So that, and your book addresses how to do that. So it feels like you can fast forward your journey to the visible expert faster than you ever could before. Is that true?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Tom. Our research has shown that a typical expert who's come up took about 5 years to go up one level of expertise. And there are five recognizable levels. So you can spend 25 years, your whole career, the core of your career, becoming a visible expert. That has changed now with all of everything from social media to online and so forth. It is now possible to do that in less than a year. And so we're seeing people regularly go up 1 or 2 levels in 1 or 2 years. And that is really a dramatically different kind of proposition.
Love that. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that in a bit, but let's talk about in the book, you share stories of two CPAs who are visible experts, and both are good friends and members of our organization, AICPA SEMA. That's Kimberlee Ellison Taylor and Jody Padar. And so talk about why you chose them and what stood out for you about them that we can all learn from.
Well, apart from being two of my favorite people, once I met them and got to know them, they're wonderful, engaging kind of folks. The thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to show how people with similar kinds of backgrounds or similar kinds of areas, where in both cases with Kimberlee and Jody, it's kind of where technology meets accounting in one level, and they've been able to have their own careers with their own ways of doing it. So it's two examples of two people who started out in a similar place but ended up very differently, yet they're both visible experts.
Yeah,
and that's what we wanted to show, is that this is possible. This is practical. This is not theoretical. It's not something that only a few people in the world can do. This is something that many people can do.
Yeah, I love that. And being able to tell their stories and their journeys helps like give other people some good ideas about how they can do that. And they are both amazing examples in our profession. So it's
aren't they?
Yeah, they're both incredible. So that is really cool. Now, the other part is you just mentioned it, but the notion that there's 5 levels of visible expertise, a maturity model, if you will, and you talk about going from like a resident expert to a global superstar like Kimberlee Ellison Taylor is. And that notion, and I heard you, 5 years per level in the old days, 25 years to get to that global superstar. So talk about what those levels are and what did that mean in your book?
Yeah. Well, what we found out was even at the first level, a resident expert, that's someone who is only known really to people who work directly with him or her, their clients and their colleagues. Even they have an impact on it. Clients prefer that, they value that, and they're willing to pay more for that kind of an expert, the in-house expert in, let's say, price transfer taxation, some area that is specific and valuable to your clients. Now, once you start to go beyond that and you're known outside, you're known in the community, like in your local area or your local practice groups or so forth, you start to get referred clients and you start to have opportunities to share your expertise. And we see how that really starts at a level 2 and a level 3, where they can really be having a big impact on the success of the whole firm. Where 1 or 2 experts can really lead and develop practice areas in ways that would just not have been possible years ago.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's why I'm waiting for my copy that's coming. I know, and I can't wait to dive into it even more. But
we'll get it to you.
I hear you. No, and I want to see the final product. I got to do the pre manuscript. So all right. You're talking a lot about obviously social media, which is probably one of the power tools to really do this, right? So what stood out for you about how they use all your visible experts in the book, how they used it, and what can we learn from those lessons?
Well, I think that's a great point. And I think the first thing we can learn is that each of those chose techniques that were relevant to their audience, because not all audiences are going to use all techniques. So, for example, if you're going after a technology audience who hangs out online, social media is probably going to be right in your mix somewhere, because that's where folks are. If you're going after, senior management partners who aren't sure why you would ever want to do social media, then not so much. Then you're going to have to find some other things. And generally, these fall into 3 categories. They're either writing and publishing of some sort, blog posts online. They're speaking, some kind of speaking engagements, whether that's an online webinar or in person, or they are some kind of networking. And that's usually in face-to-face or social media. And understanding where your audience is helps you get in front of those. And that's one of the things that really reduces those times.
Got
So
it.
yeah, and that's really that's the big learning is if you get your communication technique right with your audience, wonderful things start to happen.
Yep.
That's when the sparks start to fly.
Got it. And I'm sure it's a blend of those tools, right? So it's about speaking, writing, videos or blogging, video blogging, all
Yeah.
those techniques to then build out that audience.
Yeah, and no one person has to use every single technique.
Right.
That's the thing is once you find the ones that work for you and you're comfortable with, you can really develop an audience.
Awesome. All right, now let's and again, this one you alluded to because I love what you're talking about with this. Talk about why these visible experts are so critical to business marketing efforts and sales.
That's a great question. I love that. First of all, and I think this is foremost, expertise is the top selection criteria for most clients in most situations. Now, they use different words to express it. Sometimes they'll say, do you have experience doing this with someone just like me? Have you done this before? There's different ways of, asking about your credentials and your qualifications and so forth, but they're really looking to answer the question, can this person solve the problem for me? Do they know enough to solve this kinds of a problem for them? And understanding that that's the top thing they're looking for, it's the one thing that can unseat an incumbent who has a good relationship with a client. Other than that, there isn't much that can unseat an incumbent with a good client relationship, but superior expertise. And the one thing we hear over and over is, I love my accounting firm. They've been with me for years. They're loyal. They're great. I vacation with them, but they can't take me where I need to go. They don't have the expertise to do that. And so that, I think, is a new way of thinking about how you not only acquire, but how you keep clients for the long term, is have the expertise they need for where they're going.
That's funny. One of my favorite quotes that we use in our Leadership Academy is, we have to make our thinking visible to our clients and others in our companies or firms. And this is exactly what you're talking about, right? So the visible expert is saying, I'm going to put stuff out there in the marketplace so they can see and hear what it means, what I'm talking about, and how it's going to help them navigate this crazy, accelerating change environment that we're in.
Yeah, and what it's like to work with me and what the thinking is like, and all those good things. It makes the invisible visible.
Yeah, I love that. Now, well, obviously, we can't have a session without talking about ChatGPT.
No.
So we gotta wrap this up with, what's your take on ChatGPT and Gen AI? Will it replace finance and accounting professionals? That's the first question. And the follow-on is, what impact does it have on visible experts?
Great question. I think that what our view of AI is, it makes a competent professional more competent. It is a tool they can use like other tools. It makes them more efficient, more effective, so on and so forth. Will it replace some people? It will replace some tasks. And those will generally be the tasks that we, as professionals, we probably don't want to do in the first place. Anyway, it'll replace some of those. So I think that's kind of what it'll do in general. However, when it gets to visible experts, I think it's going to have a more limited impact, because visible experts are sort of at the level where they're inventing the new thing that's going to come next. They're discovering, they're thinking about, they're introducing, and that is not where AI really shines. That is where people shine, and can explain it to other people. So I think if anything, AI is going to increase the need for visible experts of all types.
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. We were talking to a thought leader in the whole talent and learning space, Josh Bersin, and he said this. He said, insight and judgment, that's a human skill, not a machine skill. So as long as we need insight and judgment, and to your point, that's exactly what visible experts are doing. So I think it could actually help them. I think AI is going to amplify our profession, not replace it. But to your point, it will automate job tasks inside of those job roles if the CPAs aren't moving up that value chain and providing more value, because that's where we're all headed, right?
Exactly.
So, all right, this was an awesome chance to catch up to you, Dr. Lee Frederiksen. And by the way, you can follow him on LinkedIn at Lee Frederiksen, and on Twitter at Lee Frederiksen, all one word, Frederiksen. I think you're still on the website at Hinge Marketing. So you can connect them there, hingemarketing.com. But to our audience, so thank you again, Lee, for taking the time to share with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
And then for our audience out there, I want to thank you all for joining us, and don't miss other Future Ready live sessions back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. We'll see you then. Thank you.